All right, guys, this portion of the podcast is brought to you by Turtlebox. Guys, these are without a doubt the best outdoor portable speakers on the market. They are basically 100% waterproof, nearly indestructible. These things are insane. We have used them a lot on events hosting you guys, especially on Doe Day, and I have got 3 versions in front of me right now. I've got the new smallest Ranger. You get 12 hours of runtime out of this little guy. This is perfect for taking to the beach, or I take it on my boat a lot when I'm bass fishing. The one in the middle, this is the Gen 3 original. You're getting 25 hours of runtime out of the speaker. This is probably the most unanimous or universal used speaker. It's super easy and portable to carry around. It's really loud and gives you really good sound. And the new Grande, I played this sucker the other day. It is so loud. So if you're looking to bring the house down, you're throwing a party, the El Grande is definitely your move. 40 plus hours of runtime. It's got a really good bass to it, but the sound still sounds amazing. All of these have party mode, so you can link them all up and just really blow it out, get some surround sound going. Again, if you guys are interested in these, check out turtleboxaudio.com. You can order them online, or you can check out the local retailer options for you if you're more of an in-store guy, and you can go check them out in person and pick them up. But best portable speaker on the market, hands down, turtleboxaudio.com. All right, I'm going to let y'all in on a sneaky little tip here, and I will tell you how it almost killed me a 150-inch deer on public in Pennsylvania. So the feature I'm talking about, or little sneaky tip, is the LiDAR feature that Spartan Forge dropped on their mapping app. It reveals the forest floor in a way that is unmatched by any other app that with their topo maps, anything like that at all. And the example I'll give is in Pennsylvania, I was using the LiDAR feature and was finding these old well roads, just these little high spots that were overgrown, and every one of them was littered with rub lines and scrape lines. And I almost killed a 150-inch deer my first sit. Got a lot of good deer on camera in these areas, and it was the LiDAR feature that Spartan Forge had that was revealing them, and you would not find that on any other competing app. So if you haven't tried it, I would encourage y'all to download Spartan Forge and check out the LiDAR feature. If you want a discount, go to spartanforge.ai and use code SEEK, SEEKONE, SEEK1 at your checkout, and you'll get a 20% discount. All right, guys, this portion of the podcast is brought to you by Vortex Optics. Guys, we've been using Vortex since day one. If you look at the units I've got in front of me, I got a pair of binoculars and a spotting scope. These ain't new. These things have been through several seasons with me, and if you look at them closely, they are scarred and they are beat to death. But I've been using them, tried and true, and without fail. But here's the deal. If I had beaten these or dropped them or broken them along the way, Vortex has a true, no BS, 100% lifetime warranty on these optics. No questions asked, no receipt needed. Send them in. If you need to call them, there's actually going to be a live breathing human who hunts and shoots as much as you do to answer the phone to help you guys get situated. The pair of binoculars I've got here is the Razor HD 10x42s. These are my tried and true pair of binoculars. They're universal. I can use them basically anywhere in the country. And if I want to get a real close look, I'm pulling out this bad boy. This is the Razor HD spotting scope. It's a 22x60, and you can really get in tight with these things to get a good look at these deer. It's summertime. They're out feeding. If you can lay eyes on them, your optics are super important. Study there a minute. We're going to keep rolling. And Vortex is the right call. We've been using them tried and true. We haven't used anything else, and we won't be. So if y'all are interested in checking them out, go to their website, vortexoptics.com, or check them out on our website, seek-one.com, search Vortex. You can find them there as well if you want to do some research on what item is the right fit for you. And do me a favor, go check out Vortex on all their social pages. They post some pretty cool stuff too. Appreciate you guys. Back to the podcast. All right, we're jumping right into the next podcast. I've never done a back-to-back one like this, but I think given the opportunity, so we just did the podcast with Cody and Josh talking about the general, hour-long talking about one specific deer. I feel like we still even missed a lot because it's like the second we ended, it's like, oh, what about this? What about? But there's a lot of avenues we can go and different just like categories to talk about, kind of roads we can go down. This one I wanted to do with you more specifically, Cody, because you have a deep family history into just the world of legendary whitetails, antler collecting. And Yeah, I think that I want to talk about your dad, Dick Idol. I really don't know much of your dad's kind of backstory and stuff.
Sure.
I've kind of purposely not done research and not asked questions to you because I like just coming up with spur of the moment questions. I think it makes the best conversations. So I've withheld a lot. I mean, Ryer had a good question. I know Caleb's got some questions too, but I want to talk about your dad, just kind of history of antler collecting, but also like, I know that your knowledge of some of these folklore, bucks out there, the hole in the horn buck, just all these different stories of all these legendary whitetails, that is like just stuff of legend that it's almost like you don't get those stories anymore these days,
right.
From back in the 50s and 60s. And so there's a few particular bucks I kind of want to get just a story arc on. And yeah, that's the premise, and where it goes.
Sure.
Do you want me to bring up the Rompala buck? I know you told me last night it got you in a bit of trouble, I think.
Yeah.
I'm going to immediately put you on the spot.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'll start off by saying that, like,
you don't
I told
have to
you,
answer. You really don't if you don't want to.
No, I don't mind. I mean, at the end of the day, there's so much conjecture about this deer that it doesn't really matter what I believe. There's a big side of, like, there's a big group that think he's absolutely real. There's a lot of compelling evidence to say that he's not. I've come to this full circle where I'm like, just prove it if it is. If you're not going to prove it, then you can't expect the masses to believe. You can't say I have a world record, but I'm not going to show you.
I feel like it was only fair to bring it up at some point because we're sitting with the world record typical.
Right.
There's this other whole big controversial story of this other buck that was a supposed world record. And then we have the actual current world record that was killed, the Milo Hansen buck. I don't even know the story of the Milo Hansen deer. Do you guys know the story at all?
I feel like I've heard a long time ago, but...
Yeah, he actually killed it on a deer drive with a group of people. And, strangely enough, there was multiple other people that could have had an opportunity at this buck, but it was up in Alberta. I might say the wrong year. I think it was 94. But, yeah, deer drive pushed him through. And
did they know of him before?
Yeah.
So they'd been seeing him around or whatever?
Yeah, I think he had seen the deer before.
Okay.
I don't know if he'd had an opportunity at him, but, yeah, they knew he was there.
Wasn't that deer young?
That I don't know. I'm not sure. All I know is that deer was built to score. He's got the perfect dimensions to be... the symmetry, the long tines, the kind of everything.
Yeah, I don't remember if I read it in an article. I thought I remember reading that he was like 3 or 4, and don't take that to the bank because
Sure.
But I thought I remember hearing that he was like a younger deer.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I have not laid eyes on any definitive proof of that, but that is what I heard.
Well, let's jump into your dad, Dick
Sure.
Idol. I mean, it kind of ties into Ryer's question. Like, I know you were curious to hear, like, how did antler collecting even become a thing? I never knew about it until, like I said earlier, about the Whitetail Cribs episode with Keith Snyder.
Sure.
I've always loved big deer. The stories he told were fascinating. And then it kind of like, it's just a world I didn't even know existed.
Sure.
So I think a lot of what we're doing with the videos we've done, the podcasts we're doing, is like being able to share these stories and experiences with people who also didn't know about it. So how did is your dad like the OG, like, whitetail collector?
Well, interestingly, I actually think if you asked a lot of people, they would call him one of the OG hunters of whitetail.
Okay.
I mean, he was all around lover of whitetails, but I mean, he's killed a ton of giant bucks. Like we talked about the other day, during a time that was like the pure scouting days. Like, I mean, he wrote this book called Hunting the 4 Periods of the Rut, and the whole book is about getting into the right areas, doing a lot of scouting, and trying to make determinations off of, rubs and scrapes and sign and tracks. And, but it just back then, it required a ton of time in the bush because you weren't going to know unless you got eyes on him. That was the only way you're going to know if there was really a big buck in there.
No trail cams, none of that.
Just straight woodsmanship.
Yeah.
Were binoculars even a thing back then?
Oh yeah, but you know what I call that time is more like the trailblazing days. You look at some of the guys in the late 60s through the late 70s that were doing it. This was right before the boom because North American Whitetail was early 80s when it came out, and that was like the first real time on a national scale that they were telling the stories of these big bucks. And the consistent feedback that I get from people that have always followed the magazine and loved that was that like, hey, I didn't even know deer like this existed, let alone that, we're going to get the backstory and the hunter. And back then they'll tell you the county all the way down to like the farm where he was killed or whatever. But that was kind of, so there's part of this would be like my dad's kind of coming up story. But if you want to talk about the antler collecting world, there was two big things that came together then, and that was the birth of North American Whitetail. And when they first started it, David Morris, who, is Tecumate and all that, he was the co-founder of North American Whitetail with my dad. And he actually came to him and said, hey, we just started this magazine and we don't have really anyone to write these stories. Would you consider trying it out? And my dad said, well, I'm not a writer, but he talked him into it. And the story goes on. He ended up writing about 250 articles for the magazine over the time he was involved. And
is this specifically about certain bucks that were killed?
Oh yeah, no. So what he did is he lived in Sealy Lake, Montana at the time, and every time they got news of a big buck, he either hopped in the truck or hopped on a plane and went there.
Really?
And handled them, met them, and so it made it very intimate.
How was he catching wind of these stories? Like just phone calls and...
I mean, yeah, handwritten letters, phone calls. I mean, you couldn't dig with the internet, obviously. And so, but they had this weird edge back then because they were the pioneers of making big deer like something for everyone. They were like one of the only games in town. If somebody killed a big buck, it's like, oh, you got to get it in front of Dick Idol.
Well, he was essentially a whitetail historian.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what he was.
Yeah.
He was the guy that wrote down the stories of every big whitetail. He was the guy, the boots on the ground every time they found one or killed one.
Yeah.
He was the guy that told that story. He was the authority on whitetail history.
Yeah, and that's why, like, I don't know if you saw that Walking with Giants that Keith Snyder did on the General. It was like a brief thing, but he refers to my dad as like the OG of the collectors, but it might have been some happy luck there in the middle. But what they did is because he was going to all these big bucks, the conversation starts to be like, hey, would you ever sell this deer? He starts thinking like, gosh, that's a giant. Maybe I'd love to like hang him up, collect, that's what started the collecting idea.
So at some point he maybe realized like these are points of history.
Yeah, big time. And he'd seen enough deer in his life. I mean, he grew up in a place in North Carolina, like as a kid, that they rarely ever even saw a deer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he ran a trap line and he hunted everything else, but it was like deer was like, I mean, every couple of years a doe went through the yard or something, but at that time, again, happy luck here. There was no value base for this stuff. I mean, even some of the hunters, I think there was a few scenarios where they just gave him the rack. They wouldn't even sell it. It's not worth anything. So thus, I guess, so the next jump there is that he's acquired enough of these heads at the time, and it's a whole other story, but the one true OG collector was Fred Goodwin. And Fred had a collection that dated back to like the late 1800s. And my dad bought Fred's collection right during these key days.
Dude,
and there was like
1800s is crazy to have deer from that far back.
Yeah. And there was like 1,600 heads in that collection when he bought it.
Wow.
And so it included a bunch of famous deer now that people didn't even really know about.
Like what deer would have been in that collection?
Like I've got a picture I recently got of the Flora Campbell buck, another Maine deer, but it's the biggest deer ever taken by a lady. Just a giant. And I've got Bunch of deer, because he was a main guy. Bunch of deer from up there, but he got like the potato pile buck, which is I believe.
I gotta hear the potato pile buck.
Yeah,
I'm assuming he was killed over a pile of potatoes.
He was, and he was clearly, actually from the stories, he was the second biggest buck there. But he's Maine's state record, yeah.
So it was rumored there was another one bigger.
Yeah.
And how big was he?
I don't know the exact score on the potato pile buck. He's big, like 230s, 240s. But so he acquires all that, and then here's where the value first started to become like a mainstreaming thing. Was this leads into the legendary Whitetails collection, and this is just something I'll give my dad.
This book, right?
Yep. This is where I'll give him some foresight, give him some credit for seeing a gap. Once they started telling all the stories with North American Whitetail, they then made the legendary Whitetails collection as like a traveling display. And for like the next 10 years, he became a keynote speaker at the NRA, and he traveled with, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, and he went to all the big shows. I've got all this amazing old signage, like come see legendary whitetail hunter Dick Idol tonight at this arena in Atlanta, Georgia. And so it was the first time ever that like the world's biggest deer would come to your hometown and you get to see them and handle them. And I believe that was a big part of that, cresting that, going from obscurity to like now everybody's like, okay, these deer are real and I can actually handle them and see them. And it just drove the fanaticism of big whitetails like through the roof. And also subsequently drove the value of these deer. Now let's still go all the way back to when he bought the hole in the horn. At that point, this was like right near the time of North American Whitetail being started. He goes to Kent, Ohio, to the hunting club there. And at that point, to our knowledge, no deer had ever been purchased for more than $1,000. And he ends up buying the hole in the horn for $12,000. Then, which everybody thought he was out of his mind. He believed when he did that he had the new world record. And the irony now that the hole in the horn is like unbuyable almost. It's just who knows what it would be worth on the open market. But
Do you think the hole in the horn buck is the most valuable whitetail on the planet?
I believe it to be, yes.
And your dad still has that?
No, he sold it. It's in King of Bucks now.
Oh, okay.
See, this is what's crazy is, he bought the hole in the horn buck for $12,000 at the time. People thought he was a madman. Mm-hmm. And now it's like, man, he's a genius. Mm-hmm. The general was just bought for $1 million.
Yeah.
At the time, everyone's probably thinking, golly, that is wild.
Yeah.
Give it another 40 years.
Everybody's a madman until they're a genius.
Yeah.
Dude, give me the CJ Alexander buck to sell in like 10 years from now, and I'll go get a crazy number for it. Just the stories and the lore.
That was my question. So I had a question before we started. So like we talked about the general, we talked about the value and how the history and all those things add to the value. Mm-hmm. And obviously there's tons of history and tons of stories and all the things that came out, the controversy with the stickers and all that. Well, now, like as this show that, we shot yesterday with Lee and with Josh and with you, that is adding value again to that deer, right?
Yeah. I'm going to pull the Jerry Jones here, like with all the kind of trouble players that he's had with the Cowboys over the years. He's like, I don't care what the news is as long as they're talking about the Cowboys.
Yeah.
And I'm not an advocate for creating drama and stuff like that, but it's the stories we tell and it's the history that makes them valuable. I've been approached with a few giants that people want to sell, and I'm like, nobody knows anything about this deer. And I'm just going to be honest with you. You can't look at like stories like this you see in the news and social media and stuff and think, oh, I've got a real big one too. And I know a lot of people are probably asking themselves that question. Well, if the general can go for $1 million, what's mine worth?
I was asking the same questions about the sheds I had. And it's like, like I've said, I would never sell them. To me, they're priceless, but it is curiosity, that has you asking the question, like, well, what is mine worth? I have this buck I killed, or I have these sheds. Like,
yep.
anyone out there that's got some old antlers is probably going to inevitably ask the question, like, what's mine worth?
That and is well documented. I mean, there's a 2-hour film, then you end up killing them the next year. Like, there's a ton of history, and they're verifiable and all those things. You would think that would just drive value.
Make no mistake about it, because Lee Ellis killed it and found the sheds and documented, it's worth significantly more than if just a local there had killed it and even found those sheds. We'd probably never even know about it, for one, maybe. But even still, same deer, different person calls me up and say, hey, what do you think it's worth? I'm telling them a different.
And for the record, that has never been my motivation.
Sure.
With deer. I love deer. If they were worth pennies, I wouldn't treat it any differently. I'm just a whitetail lover.
Yeah.
Whether they're valuable or whether they're worth nothing.
Well, that's where his dad started too. It's the exact same reason his dad started. He created it out of passion for deer.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 12,000 for the hole in the horn, it was worth it to him.
Yeah, for sure.
He wanted it so bad that it was like, whatever it takes.
Well, and at that point, nobody was telling those stories, and North American Whitetail comes along and gives it a platform, and then creates the value proposition. Then King of Bucks happens, and stories start happening, and the wheel starts turning. Without those things happening, without the picture surfacing of those kickers, without all of these things happening, what value would it have other than to you personally?
Right.
It's like, now that we created the value as lovers of whitetails. Yeah. Your dad was a part of the history, North American Whitetail and all that. And Lee's adding to that history. The show that he's doing is adding to that history. It's all this complicated web of things that's created something from not necessarily nothing, but something in the beginning that was literally just a bone laying there.
Yep.
Now there's $1 million sitting right there.
Well, you think about, which is so hard to fathom.
It's nuts.
When you think about collections, it's like you look at a jersey card from Hank Aaron, right? A little patch of a jersey and a cardboard card is worth maybe $5 at face value. If you were just to be like, hey, here's a piece of fabric and some cardboard, it's worth $5. But it's not worth $5 in the collecting world and in the world as a whole, because we have assigned a value to it that is consistent with the impact that that person and that jersey has had on, the sporting world as a whole. It's all about the story. And it's the same thing with these, if you were to be like, well, how much is a antler worth just for being an antler? Well, it's not very much.
Yeah.
But for the impact that it's made, for the story that it is, for how it resonates with people who love whitetails, that's where the value is.
Yeah. That's what Josh said when he first saw the pictures of that deer when he was, a sophomore or junior in college.
Yep.
And it's just been festering inside of him ever since. And then he got to the opportunity to buy it, and it's like, I'll pay just about whatever it takes to get them. Like, I've been waiting on this for 20 years.
Yep. Yeah. And going back to, imagine this, guys, just going back to that turn where they started traveling with the deer, imagine having a captive audience. Like, we talk about audiences a lot, different social media platforms and everything like that. Imagine having an audience that's sitting there going, I can't wait until the next one comes out, because I know there's going to be 10 more deer in there that I've never seen before. Like, they had that front line, they built the interest, they built the intrigue, and then it's like, this next issue that comes out is going to have something else. I mean, everyone that used to love North American Whitetail will tell you, like, I used to sprint to the newsstand, and wait in line.
Man, I wish we could go back to those times. I really do. Yeah.
But then, we were talking about earlier, every antler is unique.
It is.
And it's its own piece of art. And then each story is unique. And sometimes the story has multiple sides. There's this guy's story versus this guy's story, the rumor of this, the rumor of that. And all that does is like, okay, I've got to have it. I got to see it. I got to hold it. I got to touch it.
Yeah.
Two things that are crazy to me is like that there was because it's hard to fathom for me, only being from a further along time, that there was a point in time where people didn't care about antlers. Like that just they didn't have hardly any value. Just kind of like,
that one got picked up, nobody cared.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it gets thrown into a barn for all these years. And then the other thing that's crazy to me too is, and you kind of said this a couple times, and at first I was like, well, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but now I get it, is like you were saying until some of these magazines and things came out that like, or maybe it was Josh that said it, that he didn't know that deer like that existed. It's like before social media, before these magazines came out, people are only going kind of based on their own experience.
Yep.
And it's like if they're only seeing little 4-pointers and spikes and 6-pointers and like stuff like that, it's like they had no idea that this whole other world existed, that these whitetails can get to these other sizes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the magazine coming out had to have been like a crazy eye-opening experience to people, and I'm sure people were going crazy to get to see them.
Yeah. I mean, look at your experience yesterday. We said this, and I know you've seen a lot of big deer, but there's big deer, there's the booners, then there's that 1%, that upper echelon that is 99% of people are never going to see in the wild, and you just don't, if you don't ever get to see it, you just don't know that difference is, even if it's some cases it's a matter of a certain amount of inches, but it's staggering. Like you talk about, like, I would shoot a 180 every day of the week my whole life, it wouldn't matter, that'll always be a shooter. But you get around these, I mean, you held a couple in your hands yesterday that scored almost 150 on one side. You held the biggest non-typical in the world, and he scored 184 on one side.
Yeah.
You know, it's you just don't know until you get to actually experience it. And it's, I think that was the thing that lit a fire for so many of these people. And it's just crazy. But then you add in the fact that not just my dad, but like everybody at that time did this for like the love of the game.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't money in it. They actually created a space that later
Inadvertently kind of created
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I absolutely attribute most of those guys from that time as trailblazers and kind of before their time. They just kind of, you know, everybody thought he was crazy till they didn't. And then they're like, oh my gosh, he assembled the best collection of whitetails in the world, and he's coming to, you know, Flint, Michigan next month. I can't wait to go see him. And that happened for years. And about the time that he kind of segued out of it, the antler collecting side of things had really got it caught in its own speed and really took off from there. And there's some great collectors now, and there's some people, doing it at a high level. But just to touch on the general, I think we just created a wave in the whole industry on that side. And I will say this for the record, that like my motivation has always been to tell the stories. And I guess also for the record, to really back that up, I've always just done this because I love it. I don't make anything from it. The selling of the general was something that kind of fell in my lap, and I sell art for a living, you know, so I wasn't out here wheeling and dealing antlers or, you know, trying to get the best deals or whatever. I just wanted to shed light on some of these giants and their history, and it kind of took on a life of its own from there. And it became really fun too, because there's chasing the stories is like an endless rabbit hole you can go down, and I don't think I'll ever find the end in my lifetime. But yeah, I guess, and then to segue from where he was there, I'd started hearing rumblings of, you know, this shed over here went for $50,000, this one over here, stuff like the Monarchs. That's, you know, there's been some several $100,000 transactions, but to put this in perspective here, to my knowledge, the biggest transaction was like 15 years ago, and it was 20 heads, and the deal was for like $2 million, and there was 20 like historical heads in there. And so this one set of sheds going for $1 million is like,
that was going to be my question. What was the next closest?
I think that was it. Single
Can you imagine?
transaction. I think there's been the occasional deer that has gone for a couple $100,000, but nothing's ever gotten close to $1 million.
Can you imagine being, was it 58 he picked that up?
Yeah, or 59.
59. Yeah. That farmer picked that up, to know one day that'd be worth $1 million.
And it's flying around on a private jet. And
Yeah, yeah. Like, you know, that wasn't in that dude's bingo card.
No.
No. But again, it's just like they didn't view it that way back then.
No.
Like that's what was crazy to me, was he didn't go get his gun and be like all about it next year. Like, I need to kill this thing. It was just, it just wasn't it back then.
Yeah.
What whitetails were in that group of 20? Like, what whitetails were in that bundle?
You know, I don't know. That was a private transaction. Mike would probably know because he was in that world back then. That's not an overly like publicized thing. Someone might have shared it somewhere, but it's not been like, there wasn't an article on it or anything. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of blown away by all this, even the fact that we're sitting here right now, because I feel like stuff like that transaction and all this breakthrough with sharing the stories has kind of led us here. Mm-hmm. Like you said yesterday, just even us, the way we connected was Instagram. But it's one thing I'll say about that is I like to put the big antlers out there and the stories, and then I just operate under the belief that you're a few degrees away from everybody. And so it's just been really cool to see that there's still this hunger and this fire. It's way more than I ever would have thought, but there's a space in this outdoor world that people want it.
Yeah.
And it ties them to like the history. It ties them to their own like first memories of hunting camp. And because most of the famous deer are older. So you think about a time that has come and gone, kind of like the golden days.
It's the story.
Yeah.
It's the story. It all goes back to the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, the number's cool, right? $1 million. That's a world I'll never fathom. Can't comprehend it. But like, what interests me more than, what'd that deer sell for? What'd that deer sell for? Is like, how was he killed? What's the history? Or where were the sheds found? Who found them? You know, how long were they? Like, just the kind of the background of it all is what lights my fire personally, and why I wanted to do this whole trip was to, you know, open the door to stories, because it's always intrigued me. The potato pile buck, never heard of it.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming it was a farmer that dumped a bunch of potatoes, and this buck was just coming to it and eating potatoes.
Yep.
What, I mean, like, what other stories like that are out there that off the top of your head are like really good stories that are worth potentially sharing? Like crazy stories, or, I mean, is there any that stand out to you that?
Well, there's one, and not to go in the whole story, but if the Jordan buck, for example, that's a wild story. If you go back to the, you know, last century early, and they used to have to get on the train to ride all the way up to where, in the winter, to where they were hunting. And, you know, Jordan ends up killing this buck. It falls in the river, and he has to drag it out of the river, and basically ends up taking it to a taxidermist who moves, and he never sees the deer again for like...
What year is this?
This is back in like the 30s or 40s. And the taxidermist ends up moving, and back then he had no way to get a hold of him, so he just didn't see it again for decades. And then come to find out, many years later, someone buys that house, and the Jordan buck has been in the attic of that house the whole time. And so it'd been right down the street from him all those decades that he thought it was gone, and they had not deemed it the world record yet. And then basically some interesting turns of events, but his like son is driving through and sees a name on a mailbox and pulls in there and ends up finding it again. And it gets to B&C. They go back and forth. Jordan's sitting there saying like, "That's my deer."
I remember reading about that story, that he was it the taxidermist that kept it for himself pretty much?
Well, no, I mean, the taxidermist moved to like a different state, but he did not take the deer with him, and he just left it. He just left it there.
Yeah, so it's like this guy tells this story of this giant buck he killed. Now, wasn't he telling his family members and kind of describing?
Nobody believes him?
No one, I'm guessing probably no one believed him.
I would be livid. I'd be so mad. And it would be so frustrating because I'd be like, I saw it.
Good thing you didn't go burn the guy's house down.
Seriously,
burn his deer up in it.
And imagine that, like, we're sitting here, we're in his shoes, we're sitting here having this conversation, and over the course of 30, 40 years, it's right across that dirt road over there in that other farmhouse.
Yeah. How many years was it missing?
I think it was like in the 90s that they actually named it.
Was he still alive when?
He died a month before they gave him credit and named it the world record.
But he was still alive when they found it.
Yeah. So he was telling them, that's my deer from all those years ago.
You think it's 30 years?
More, yeah,
years?
probably more, like 30 or 40 years.
Call it 40 years. Dude, okay, picture this. You kill this monster buck at 30 years old. It goes missing. You're telling everybody about it. You like probably nobody believes you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're the man at hunting camp who's always got.
Can't
they're
get
like,
it out.
okay, he's going to tell you this story about this buck. It's complete crap, but you just got to hear him out. He won't
know.
stop till he tells
It's like
everybody
the guy
about
that
it.
saw Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then 40 years go by. You're 70 years old. At that point, like, you've probably fully accepted you're never
Yeah.
going to be validated.
Yeah.
And then this buck emerges, and you're like, "That's him."
Yeah.
Like, ha.
I could not personally imagine, because like when I kill a deer, like, dude, it's mine. Like I'm almost in love with that deer. Like
Yeah.
I'm infatuated, and for it to be gone for 40 years, I could not imagine
Yeah.
that feeling of seeing it, 40 years later, and then it turns out to be the world record.
Yeah.
Like,
And it was the world record all the way up until Milo Hansen. At 206, I mean, he was the one.
Jeez.
And he never got to know that he got credit for it, which is crazy.
because I saw the old pictures of him with the deer head, right?
Yeah, they reunited him with it. He got to hold the deer, and
What state was that?
that was up in Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
They didn't never give it back to him.
Well, again, somebody else owned it by that time, but they gave him credit for it, but it was after he passed.
So they found it. Someone else owned it, so they were like, "Hey, yeah, you can see your deer, but it ain't yours."
Yeah, but
Right.
in theory, in the 30s, I mean, all you have is his word that that's the deer he shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has
Like,
no
how
proof.
do you prove it?
He has no
You
proof.
don't. I mean, you can't prove it.
Right?
Other than he's been telling the story for 40 years.
Yeah.
He's got a kicker on his left G2. And he's got this and he's got this.
That is exactly what I'm talking
Yeah.
about when I'm talking about like these stories that
Yeah.
are just so infatuating to hear. What? Give me some more. What else we got?
He's like injected into my veins.
Right. Well, I mean, we have to go for a minute. We have to go to the hole in the horn, just because
Your dad and the hole in the horn are
Yeah.
pretty tightly tied together.
they very much so. And he named it the hole in the horn. And again, I was telling
He
Lee.
named the general too, didn't he?
Yeah. He
awesome.
named the general.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I think of any deer with me reading magazines when I was younger, the hole in the horn is probably the one I heard the most.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they did such a great job too of like making him like a mystical creature. But what's wild about him is that there was this big theory back then my dad had about the amount of shrinkage that a deer would have.
Hate shrinkage.
And there's a chance same. There's a chance this deer probably
Caleb liked that one.
I was trying to be mature through that.
but how much shrinkage did this deer have sitting on a dry rotting on a wall from, for 50, 60 years? It's just, he could have been a 350. We won't ever know. And of course, I was telling Lee last night, it was one of the first ones that they were really trying to give a name that it wasn't hunter killed. One of the first like real famous deer that they're like, okay, normally we call it the Wrath buck or the Jordan buck.
Yeah.
Or, so obviously when my dad got it, it already had the hole. And there's this, it's kind of like the Ron Pola buck with arguing the facts. Everyone says they know the facts, but like that hole, was it a bullet hole? Was it the wire under the fence after he got hit by a train? A lot of people swear that they drilled a hole and put a wire through it at the hunting club there to hold it right on the wall. To that, I don't think we'll ever truly know. And what's funny is I've said that before on a podcast, and I get like lectured in the comments like,
Sure.
I know someone that saw him drill the hole, and then I'll get someone right after that. It's like, well, I know one of the guys that was there when they found it, and there was a wire going through it. So that is one where I humbly step back and say, I personally think that it was the wire under the fence, but I don't know for sure. But, that one's got its whole own story of like maybe being the new world record, and then just, again, the cool stories that we talk about, maybe knocking on all these old doors and seeing where these giants may be. This thing was sitting in that hunting club there in Kent for decades.
It was hit by, or thought to be hit by a train, right?
Yep.
So someone found it on the train tracks?
Yeah, there was the train tracks, and then there were right next to the tracks, there was actually like some military property that had a high fence, like a mild fence. And the deer was found like kind of tangled up underneath the open cut wire on the bottom. Leads me to believe too, he might have gotten hit by the train and he wasn't dead yet, and he thrashed and kind of struggled with getting tangled up in that fence. What's not known either for sure is whether he was on the military side or he was on the train track side. But, you know, guy walking to work one day down the tracks finds him, and that's how he ended up over there.
What state is this again?
That's in Ohio.
Okay.
Kent, Ohio. Yeah.
So then they bring him into this like hunt club.
Yep. And if I'm remembering this correctly, the group there that made up this hunting club, they primarily hunted up in like the Hudson's Bay area, but they were based out of there, and it was kind of like a saloon setting. So it's a place to get together and drink and smoke cigarettes and play poker or whatever. Mm-hmm. But what was funny is for years, these rumblings would come about. Again, this is back when if you got pictures from someone, they're sending them to you in the mail. Mm-hmm. So it's like people kept saying, hey, we're seeing some of these big bucks coming out. There's one up there that's better than the rest. And everybody's like, we hear that all the time. But what's crazy is Fred Goodwin that I mentioned, that my dad bought his collection, he went there years before my dad and popped in there, and at the time they wanted $1,000 for him, and he turned it down. He said, that's twice as much as I've ever paid for a deer, and he passed on it. So the fact that it really wasn't all that long later that my dad paid $12,000 for it.
What year would that have been when he turned it down? Ish.
Early 70s.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot of money.
And that's a, you know, a guess. Yeah. I know it's in that ballpark.
Yeah,
I don't have the exact year, but yeah, I mean, $1,000 then was a lot of money. And so, you know, its journey from there to, and then.
So it just remained there.
It remained there until my dad got there, like right around the birth of North American whitetail in the early 80s. And I think that was one reason too he was so willing to, you know, put the money down too, is because he saw where all this was going. Mm-hmm. And he knew. So I told Lee when he first got there, at the time they had just called the Missouri Monarch the new non-typical world record at 333 and change. My dad gets there, sits down, takes about an hour to tape this whole thing. He's got stuff going everywhere to tape this whole thing off, and he came up with right around 346. So in his head, he's going, okay, this is far and away the new world record, and I have to have this deer. You know, the guy that was running the club at the time came up to him and said, so what'd you get? And he just didn't want to tell him. So he's like, I messed up my numbers. I got to confirm this before I go saying. Mm-hmm. So he buys it, brings it back to Montana, and at the time, a gentleman, Phil Wright, was one of the most prominent B&C scorers, and he happened to live in Montana. So he drives it over to Phil, and Phil, mind you, Phil wrote a full book about B&C scoring back then that was one of the most referenced ones on how to score big deer. Mm-hmm. And he takes it to him, and Phil comes up with like 345 and 3/8.
So really close.
Yeah. And so the B&C only meets every 3 years to actually officially enter stuff into the book. So they had some time to wait. In the meantime, they publish a North American Whitetail issue with him on the cover saying new world record. And I don't want to project. I don't think B&C liked that. And
that they essentially said it was before they said it was.
Right.
Oh, little ego deal there.
Yeah. And again, this is me speculating.
Yeah.
But so they come back and basically ding him for symmetry, calling him like a 4x5 instead of a 5x5 frame.
So they didn't honor the guy that wrote the book on it. Oh.
And I've got stuff from between him and my dad where he's like, man, this is really embarrassing. This is not right. There was a bunch of people fighting. There was strongly written letters between B and C and my dad. And
I don't understand why that matters. Why does it matter if it's the new world record just because you weren't the one that scored it? You know, like, oh, all right.
So what is he now? Like, what is he officially locked in at now?
they've got him at 328 and change,
Which is how far away from the world record?
5 inches.
So he is the world record.
In my mind, and in this book, there's a side-by-side of the two mounts with Roger Sellner holding them, and you tell me which one is a bigger deer. But again, this is where I love my dad used to call them the Whitetail fraternity. This is where I love our community, is that there's a reason to this very day why, even though the hole in the horn's number 2, that's the most valuable deer in the world. And I never hear hardly the Missouri Monarch come up ever. Like, that's one of the least talked about of, like, I mean, he's the world record, and yet it just never comes up. And if you gave anybody the option, you can have any deer. I mean, I think most people are picking the hole in the horn.
Which that's what's incredible to me is we've talked about so many deer. I mean, even in this room, the ones that you've told stories about of 1%ers from Maine, Iowa, Nebraska, Ohio, Montana,
Different states all
over the place. Like, look, there's genetics, there's the right conditions. You know, there's, like Lee said, like, there's a lot of stars have to align.
Yep.
But Alberta, like, there's still places up there that we talked about. There could be deer that are below our minds that are probably hanging in somebody's barn right now because it's still so remote. Mm-hmm. But, like, there's not just like one spot, you know, that you can have the opportunity to run across or harvest or pick up a shed like that. Like, there's multiple places, and sometimes multiple places within one state or one area.
Yeah. Well, it's like the Tucker buck. The Tucker buck was the world record at one point.
Tennessee.
And Tennessee, if you had to hold a gun on me and say, pick the state where the next world record is going to come from, I promise you I'm not picking Tennessee.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, it can happen. Maybe not in Florida, but it can happen. I don't know. I mean, well, it can happen.
There's a big old swamper.
Yeah,
just running around. He's fighting alligators down there.
There's some big swamps.
It can happen anytime, anywhere. You know.
Yeah, but we hear stories from Texas. You hear stories from, South Dakota. There's some giants in South Dakota. North Dakota. I mean, there's an opportunity that, especially in some of those states that there's not very many people, that deer live their whole life and then just happen to stumble across them one day, or a farmer checking a fence, or, kid riding a motorcycle, and they run across what could be the next end-all be-all shed.
I think the part that may be hard, and I meant to ask this earlier, is like, if a world record came out today, is it like, with all the high fences and stuff and deer getting out and things like that, how do you genuinely authenticate that this deer is 100% free range and wild versus like, this was a doe that got out of a high fence that was bred by some crazy buck, had a fawn, and this fawn kind of grew. Like, is there any way at all to be able to know for sure?
Well, certainly, trail cam photos and other evidence like that are huge. I think the one upside to there being such tremendous pressure on the new big deer that come out from, like, the overarching community is that you are under the microscope. The one deer that just came out that was the guy tried to claim was a giant that he killed, and someone else surfaced with photos of it behind it.
I just talked about that on a different podcast. Yeah. I forgot what the details of it was, but what were the details on that?
I just saw it too. I literally just saw that for the first time the other day, but he brought it to a show and claimed that he killed it. And actually, I was on a thread underneath a post where some guy was ripping everybody for saying that we were casting doubt. And, I basically just said, hey man, people are just asking the question. I don't want the deer to be high fence, but people are going to ask that question. So I think that's the one upside now is, like, if you come out with a giant, you're going to be under scrutiny, and it's in your best interest to have, especially if you want the notoriety and the things that come with doing that. And one other thing that bodes well is, say, like in the Midwest, a lot of the giants, other people are going to know about them. So if you were to be the one that could kill the buck and actually go to the neighbor and be like, hey, could I also get some of your trail cam pics and any cell phone pictures you have of it, just something. Because there's a big shadow of doubt that is cast now, because like you walk around SCI or the SHOT Show or any of those and there's giants in every booth and you're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Most of these deer are for show to kind of catch eyeballs. But if I was fortunate enough to ever harvest a truly like world-class buck, I would want to have, I'd give out coordinates. I'd give out anything I had on it.
You'd have to have the documentation to kind of verify.
Cross your T's and dot your I's on that kind of stuff for sure.
And the irony is, if you read these because the stories, there's 40 deer in each of those 3 volumes. More than half of them are people that were like, oh, this was their first time hunting. This person got rained out in their other spot and decided to go over here. It's still funny that it's still, even with all the research, if you had the best spot, it still takes a lot of luck and a lot of being in the right place at the right time and getting lucky.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no question. It always seems like it's, but that's the stories I like, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I think wasn't the Huff buck, like he didn't even really know about that deer.
Right.
Like he just goes out and sits a stand and here comes this almost world record buck. Like
strolling up the creek bed, killing with a crossbow.
Crazy.
And good for him too. You like to see those happen to good people.
Yeah.
You know, so like we've talked a lot about a rising tide lifts all ships. I don't want to take the stance. If someone out there gets a giant, my first thought is not like, how do I debunk this or that's BS or something. I'm like, good for them.
Well, do you remember that deer in Kansas, like 4 years ago that like, I think just showed up on this guy's trail cam, had no tag in its ear, but had a cut from the ear where it potentially ripped the tag out. But like he posts the picture of this deer and it's instantly you're like, that is a high fence deer. I don't like the immediate look of it. You're just like, there's no way. It's like a 400 something plus inch deer. He didn't know that it got out of some other fence. This buck just showed up on his camera and shot it. And it's like, I think after he killed it, then pictures came out of it was a high fence deer.
Right.
But it's like, I don't blame that guy. If it's the same situation, I'm shooting that deer.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think there's also certain looks that you can kind of suspect. Like, don't high fence deer have whiter antlers?
Yeah. Chalky white antlers usually.
Yeah. The coloring's usually a little different. When you really get down to all the rub marks and the scrapes and everything on them, scratches and all that a wild deer, the way they're using them is, I mean, most of the high fence deer, the ones that are harvesting them for, you know, doing antler chews and all this stuff, they cut them off before they can shed because they don't want them to hurt themselves or each other.
Right.
So they typically don't even let them shed. It's tough to know because I know that like places like Pennsylvania, there's like an insane number of deer farms. Do we know that, and Texas is the same way, how many over generations of doing this now, how many deer have gotten out?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If a world record was shot in Texas, like,
would it have an asterisk by it?
I feel like people would kind of be, because there are so many fences down there, I feel like people would be immediately kind of questioning, like, is this a true free range whitetail, or was this, you know, some kind of fence deer in some way, shape, or form? Yeah.
Well, and look at the one, I don't remember the state, but just a few years ago, a young kid, like 12, 13 years old, killed one that was a giant, like a 280 or something like that. But they figured out definitively that it had gotten out of a game farm, but it had been out for like a couple years. It had gone wild, and the kid was just hunting his normal spot, and that thing walked in front of him. And so it's like nothing off the young man, and good for him for getting the experience to shoot a giant. But that one didn't go in the book.
You know how much that would suck to shoot, like, I shot a world record, and then it's like the elation, all the stuff, you can't believe it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah.
And the rancher goes, here's a picture.
We've been missing him for 2 months. Thank you for finding him.
Yeah, you owe me about $12,000.
How many generations?
In the punch bowl.
Yeah, how many generations removed do you think it would take? So say you've got some massive freak of a buck. He gets out.
I'm going to go pee. Y'all keep talking.
And, you know, breeds and does the normal thing. How many generations do you think removed from that high fence buck, would you then be comfortable considering it viable as a free range world record class deer?
I look at it like this. You look at it in terms of baseball in the steroids era. How many years off of steroids do they have to be not on steroids anymore?
Yeah.
You know? So like, are they still reaping the benefits of the steroids even 2 or 3 years after they've got off, as long as they've maintained? You know, so essentially in the high fence, you've created this genetic superpower, and then you open the gates of this 500-acre high fence that has all these obviously does in there that have thrown these genetics out to the bucks, and then you have the bucks out there breeding wild does. I don't know. There's an argument to say, can you ever?
Yeah.
Well, and then 10 years.
And then you think about, obviously this is a much broader take, but over the course of, biology, animals are constantly evolving. They may be changing their environments and their habitats. And, you look at dogs, what we know as dogs right now are not what dogs were, 500 to 1,000 years ago. But we accept them. There's the American Kennel Club. You can say, hey, this is this kind of dog. This is this kind of dog. But the reason dogs are like that is because of generations of obviously selective breeding. Mm-hmm. But, is there a point at which, maybe so many bucks have just like over time gotten out, that they changed the gene pool that this is now the normal.
Yeah.
And then is that acceptable? It's almost like, where do you end up drawing the line, and then where does it go from there?
I like to think when Lewis and Clark were coming across, there was just 200s on every ridge.
I kind of envisioned that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the sheer game numbers.
Yeah.
But for me, with the question that you asked about how long, I've hunted in areas where, during the rut, those bucks are in certain spots, and then they're traveling long distances. I've also hunted in areas where there's limited resources, where the same herd stays like generation after generation. To me, you insert those genetics in there, they're in there forever. But since we don't have a model for that yet, I mean, if someone kills one of those, they're considered a wild deer, and it's like, I don't know. And that would be a question. I mean, you see more big deer than any of us. I mean, we're at a stage suddenly in our whitetail journey where there's seemingly more big bucks getting killed every year.
Yeah, that was the other question I wanted to ask, because a lot of the animals we've been talking about seems like it's 50s, 60s, 70s. So like where are we
90s,
at as
little 90s in there too, though.
Yeah, where are we at as far as, these caliber deer now? Are we seeing more of them? Are we seeing less of them?
Well, there's one weird asterisk to throw in there. There was a lot of the Midwest and going up to the Northeast that all the way up until the 60s, there was no hunting. The first hunting seasons were back in like the early 60s. So there was this flurry of giants that came out. New York State, the state record non-typical in New York is like in the low 270s, killed on the first day of the season for the first hunting season they'd like ever had. And it's still and nothing's ever, but it was in an area that no one had been hunting for 100 years. And some guy parks his truck and walks in there like morning one and kills a 270. And they've never had stuff like
Found
that.
a good spot.
But so there is, it was funny because when you look at some of the old record books, it'll tell you the non-typical and typical records from each state. I had a book that my dad gave me from like the 60s. And I'm like, Dad, in Montana, we're actually hanging in there. I thought the Midwest was, crushing it. And he goes, well, yeah, that's because they weren't hunting till like the 60s. And since then, they've crushed Montana, the Midwest and all that. But
my answer, like, I'll let Lee answer too, but my answer to what you're saying is like, are there more record book animals now? I think two sides to that coin. I feel like, yes, there is, but I also think we know about them now.
Exactly.
And then this other side of that coin would be that maybe before there were still being deer like this killed or probably never dying of old age and we don't know about them. So
Farmers throwing them in the shed.
But I think right now the reason that it feels like there is, or if there is now we have the technology. We understand management. We understand conservation. We're imposing regulating things on ourselves as to, well, we have 5 bucks on our property. Well, only one of them's old enough. We're not going to shoot those 3 deer. We're going to let them grow and let them pass on their genetics. We're only going to shoot this one. So I think that there's a lot of things to that, to where, when you have, think about like a Lakoski farm or a Drury farm where they're completely in control of, a couple thousand acres in some of the most primo whitetail habitat in the world, and they can control what they eat, how much water they have, their cover, and they're in charge of that deer's entire ecosystem,
keeping pressure out,
and then they can control the pressure to where if there's not a deer they want to hunt there is no pressure. It's virtually a sanctuary, and that big buck is just as safe as he's in his mama's arms. So I think that's why now with social media and things, we see more record book animals. Obviously, there's a ton of value in making sure you've got a bigger buck than your buddy. So I think there's a lot of that plays into what's happening now, in terms of the size of animals and why they seem to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But deer like that, the general, is there a possibility of growing a deer like that now? Yeah. But I think now there's
no one's been able to do it.
No. Yeah. But if that happens, but that might be the reason it hasn't happened, because deer like that exists now. 100 people are going to know about it.
Yep.
And that the no pressure that deer had is going to have the pressure, and that's going to kill his growth. I mean, everybody knows that more pressure deer has, that affects everything in their life.
Sure.
Their stress level and everything, which increases how big they get and all that stuff.
I think that's what makes these older bucks so cool, is they are a little less untouched by man.
Yeah.
It's like we've tried to literally grow the world record largemouth bass. We can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mother Nature did it.
Yeah.
As much management as people are putting out there, it's like, aside from the high fence and all the crazy genetic stuff, just growing wild deer, no one's been able to grow a bigger typical. Mm-hmm. And to me, I think that's cool that some of these older bucks are still some of these records that just haven't been beaten.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's just the history of it all is so cool to me. But the genetic thing, this was a weird, and I don't remember if I told you this, maybe I did, but I kind of went down this rabbit hole a couple years ago when I killed this deer called Kimbo. And I don't know what it is about train tracks and big deer, but there's a correlation there for sure.
Yeah.
I killed this buck, very unique characteristics, double drops, and the end of his beam swooped down, even a certain flyer off the G2, and just the curvature of his antlers, all of it. Very unique deer. Well, pictures get posted on Facebook of this other buck that looks, when I first saw it, I was like, that's Kimbo. 100%. There was no doubt in my mind that is the same buck, just from a different year. Well, turns out I start reading the comments, and you're getting all kinds of mixed stories. And so I did what, a lot of antler collector guys, I started chasing down the information and tracking down who's got this deer and what's the story. And I was able to track it down, and it was a deer from Tennessee that was hit by a train. And I even talked to the conductor who hit the deer, and he said that the deer was still alive. He stopped the train. The deer was still alive and went out and killed it with a P-ball hammer. Boom, right in the head, killed it. And the rack was all busted up, and they were to collect all the pieces, put it back together, and it looked as crazy, unique, and individual, just one in a million that a deer looks like that. There are 2 identical bucks from several states away. My question was, is it possible that somehow, somewhere on the lineage, that a doe or buck or somehow that genetic made its way up, because they were both on train tracks?
Repopulated too. I mean, they could be repopulated from one area to another.
Right. Are they related?
Yeah.
And that was, I tried to do, I wanted to take DNA samples. I actually took a portion of dried velvet from that train track buck that was hit in Tennessee. And I have dried velvet from the Kimbo deer. And I have these samples, and I want to be able to compare DNA. Filmed a whole video on it. And my plan was to compare DNA and be like, they're not related. This is total fluke, or no, they are related. How this happened, I have no earthly idea.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find anybody that could compare the genetics to be able to tell me, yes, they are related, or no, they're not. Maybe you'll be able to help me on that. And maybe someday in the future we'll be able to know. But that has been in the back of my mind, is like the spread of genetics and how are they related?
Well,
how far can they spread?
Well, you look at the state of Alabama. The state of Alabama was repopulated from, like, I can't remember how many states when the deer numbers were in such decline. Alabama got deer from Georgia, from Wisconsin, from Tennessee. They got deer from everywhere. To where I was talking to one of the head guys in DNR over there, and they have records and they're biologists of fawns hitting the ground as early as September to as late as March. Like, they're having deer that are breeding pretty much year round over there, just about.
Yeah.
That they have, their deer coming in and out of rut because they were brought in from everywhere. So, like, you can essentially hit the rut anytime if you're in the right spot in Alabama. I can't remember the number. He's like, there's 52 different distinctive rut zones in Alabama. It's like
crazy.
How's that even possible? It's like, well, which has always been crazy for me when we used to hunt down there in Southwest Georgia, is the rut would hit in Southwest Georgia first, second week in November. Literally across the river in Alabama, less than 5 miles of crow flies, first week of January, last week of December. Tell me those aren't the same deer. There's the only thing that's separating them is the river. And if, deer rut, by the changing of the light, and how long the days are, well, those deer should be rutting at the same time, but they're not.
Right.
So that's always been fascinating to me.
Well, they're probably, if you're bringing them in from other states with different environments, obviously when is the right time to drop a fawn is going to be different in Wisconsin than it is in Georgia.
Yeah.
And so their little biological marker that tells them, hey, it's time to breed, is at an entirely different time period.
But that's been 50 years since they were repopulated, and they're still doing it.
But we do know that there is outlier deer that, like, most deer shed around the same time. Most, does go into estrus around the same time. But they've also found that there's bucks and does that'll actually shed and go into heat, like, on their birthday. Yeah. Which can be, it's, or they get their own time clock going. But there are these does that go in this random estrus at different times of the year. And I think a buck can get hot at any time if there's,
bright smells in the air.
Yeah. Yeah.
We kind of went off the tangent on the genetic high fence thing. Yeah. I kind of want to go back to the hole in the horn buck.
Cool. And I've got another good one for you that I thought about before. I'm like, that's the one I wanted to share.
Okay. So when your dad is taking these deer, specifically he has the hole in the horn buck. He's taking it on this, like, tour essentially. Where does it kind of go from there? Because I think Bass Pro has it now, right?
Yeah. So it segues to, the writing of legendary whitetails and starting to, like, really concrete these stories. And then, my dad actually pivoted and went a different direction in the, like, 1976, right after the magazine, a little later than that, but he sold his whole collection. And at the time, it was to a private collector. It wasn't to them yet, but that collector added a bunch of heads, and then essentially the majority of it got sold to Cabela's.
How many deer heads did your dad have at one point in his collection?
Well, he started high and actually worked down because the quality was going up. So, like, when he bought the Fred Goodwin collection plus what he already had, he probably had 3,000 heads.
Oh, my gosh.
Because there was 1,600.
Where do you keep 3,000 deer heads?
Dude, ask my mom.
I got a problem with 30 of them.
my mom, the story of my mom, when my dad brought the hole in the horn home to Montana, she was like, Another deer for the space we don't have.
Yeah.
You know,
But no, babe, this one's different.
Yeah, this is different. Yeah.
But once he started really getting infatuated with just that like top echelon, he was even selling off the 200s and on the non-typical side, 220s, 230s, and some of that stuff was out because he just wanted the creme de la creme. Like,
he was chasing that high, that first one,
Yeah.
man. He was trying to get back to that big one again.
yeah. Yeah. And then what was cool is he used, like, if he wanted certain big deer, he could show up and say, hey, I'll give you 5
Of these other
200s
deer.
for that one.
So where do you keep 3,000 deer?
Man, there
Do
was.
I just picture like a little Cody coming home from kindergarten, just like trying to wedge his way through all the deer mounts to go to his
I'm
bedroom?
sweeping them off the bed so I can go to bed at night. And it was very much like that. There was so many deer, but by the time he had really taken off, my dad's always had a separate, we call it the studio because he's also an artist, but his studio looked more like a museum.
Yeah.
And so like even by the time I was like 5, 6 years old, he always had a separate studio that was like a 50 by 80 building that was full, but it was on display too. It wasn't like stored. It was laid out like a museum.
Wow.
So his studio has always been a place that inspired me and really kind of not surprised now circling back in my midlife here to doing all this stuff myself because I've always loved being around it. But yeah, once and that could be for a different conversation, but once he got out of that, he segued right into doing the big bronze monuments and stuff that are in front of.
That picture you showed me is crazy. That's at the Bass Pro in
Springfield.
in Springfield. So I've never been there before, but I had no context of the size of it.
Right.
And then you showed me a picture of him, and you said it's all clay.
When it was in clay, yeah, he sculpted it out of clay, oil-based clay.
How many is it?
The bronze that's in King of Bucks there, that's right before you go into.
You know, when you go up the escalator to go into the museum before you watch the video, before you go in the museum, there's a giant whitetail that's 10 feet tall.
Oh, it's like
They look
30.
taller.
30
Yeah.
feet tall. It's
And your dad made that?
Yeah.
Yeah, he
His
sculpted
dad
that.
sculpted that.
How many pounds of clay did you say it was?
It was. See, nowadays they'll actually sculpt a small one and they can use like CNC machining to take a foam form and blow it up, like keeping it to scale. But back then they didn't have that, so they just sculpted it full on in that full size. And it was like about 15,000 pounds of oil-based clay.
Isn't that crazy?
And it was
You said he made it inside the studio because they couldn't.
Yeah, in the bronze foundry down in Lander, Wyoming, because they couldn't.
transport it,
Which is funny. I was a
right?
kid.
That's what
Yeah,
you're saying they couldn't transport?
Yeah, and
that
even,
was gonna be my next question: is how do you move something like that?
Well, how do you move a 30-foot statue once it's done?
well, what's funny is I think that with a crane, but when they first
About to say crane.
Yeah, but it won't go under a bridge.
But
like even if you lay it on its side, it's still going to be the rack's going to be 15 feet tall.
Yeah, it
on a
was
trailer.
outside when they first put it in. When they first installed it there, it was actually out front of the everything, and they like built the thing around it.
Yeah, they have to have.
Yeah, so it was.
How'd they get it from the factory? The foundry.
Literally put it on a crane and hauled it on like a
Giant
wide load. Yeah,
And just made sure that the
Antlers
route
hit a low
didn't
bridge.
have bridges.
I mean, laying on its side, it might be 8 or 10 feet tall. Like standing, it's because from what I remember, the actual antlers were 10 feet wide, the spread on that bronze. But the deer itself is like 2 stories tall.
Yeah, it's enormous.
Yeah. And then he did the one in front of the Owatonna in Minnesota. It's actually got the general and another deer running down. It's like 30 feet tall. But he did the one that's in front of North Carolina State's football stadium there, of the Wolfpack, because he actually played there back in the day. He was ACC Defensive Player of the Year for NC State back in the late 60s. And then he actually got drafted by the Cowboys, but he turned down.
So your dad's just an all-around stud.
Yeah.
Yeah, they put him in that Legends Hall of Fame there in Nashville a while back. But yeah, and then the last one he did, Jerry Jones commissioned him to do the one that's in front of Arkansas Stadium there in Fayetteville. So he sculpted that Hogs monument there. We actually made that up in Montana about 6 years ago.
How many deer did you tell me yesterday your dad had killed? Over 150, was it?
It's like he's killed 65 that were 160 or better.
Wow. Isn't that nuts?
And never owned a trail cam, never.
Makes my back hurt thinking about all the times sitting in a deer stand. That's a lot of time to see.
Oh, man, and some of the winters up there in Alberta that they used to do hunting in 40 below in those big, like, full-body suits.
He's way tougher than me, bro.
100%.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
No doubt.
Wait,
They don't make them like that anymore.
Lee can't tote that cold.
Nope. Not
Lee
built for
is
that.
not a cold weather guy.
You don't do cold, bro?
I'm built for warm weather. No, I can't do cold.
See, I'll do cold over hot, but I don't. Negative 30. That's just. It's so cold, it's hot.
Yep.
I'm built for the harsh Scottish winters. So
Dude, my only claim to fame on that is I worked for 4 years in the Arctic Circle in the oil field, so I spent 4 winters in the Arctic. And I saw the coldest day I ever saw was 82 below up there.
Oh my gosh!
And it's also where, you know, in the going into the winter, the days get shorter every day until the just stays dark for like
dark the whole time.
like 6 weeks, and then when the first sun comes up after 6 weeks, the day is only like 5 minutes long. Then the next day it's like 15 minutes, and then it goes all the way till the sun doesn't go down. So it's just light for a month.
Dude, I feel like that would mess with your mind.
It does.
Yeah, your internal clock would be like, what is
way out of
happening?
whack.
Just
I don't see how life exists at negative 80 degrees.
Yeah.
Like I feel like everything's dead.
Yeah. Everything's dead.
You know what?
Everything's
Just
dead.
in light of this, I know this isn't a deer story, but this is one you guys are going to love that I have to tell. This was from back in the early 70s. My dad moved right from NC State to Alaska and started working in a taxidermy shop in Anchorage, later started his own taxidermy shop, and then started outfitting in Alaska. And that's where he used to hunt with James Dean, and but he hunted up there with Nolan Ryan and Jeff Foxworthy and all those guys. And he was like, one of his best friends back then was Bo Jackson. He hunted a ton with Bo Jackson. But so he was going on a polar bear hunt up there, and, you know, as you may know, polar bears, the majority of the population is on the northernmost coast, like actually on the ice. That's where they den up, but the seals and everything is their main food source, so they're up there on the ice. And I've flown up there, so I have a visual of what this would be like to see. But he said, in Alaska, you can't fly and hunt the same day. Mm-hmm. So they go out in the morning, and if you've ever seen the ice caps out there just north of the most northern coast, it's like an infinite line of just chunks of ice as far as the eye can see. It's almost like mesmerizing, and the sun's gleaming off of it. It's just it's like being on the moon. But so they're flying, him and 2 other guys scouting, and the pilot says, there's up there, what is that big dark spot? And they're looking around, nothing else in the horizon is similar. So they're like, well, let's just go up there and look. So they fly up, and when they get close, they realize that it's a dead whale, like a 70-foot whale, that is all bloated up, and it ended up getting pinched in between 2 pieces of ice, big like icebergs, and it stood him up about 60 feet straight up in the air, frozen solid. Oh my gosh. And so they're sitting there circling, and they're like, and of course nobody back then has a camera or a cell phone or anything.
Yeah.
And he said they flew around for a few minutes, and all of a sudden someone goes, hey, what's that? And he looks down, and right at the base of the whale, there's this polar bear standing there that's beet red, full body. And they're like, that bear was up inside of that whale. So they keep circling, and then they notice with the binos, there's a hole about this big right at the base of that whale. And as they're circling, over the next 5 minutes, he said about 40 polar bears came out of that hole.
Oh my gosh.
And they were standing in a group, all of them beet red out on the ice looking up at the plane because they heard the noise. But they figured those bears had been all up through that whale all the way up to his head, like a honeycomb style, like eating him from the inside.
Could you imagine you're lost out there looking for cover? You crawl into this hole in a whale, and there's 40 polar bears looking back at you.
No, you're the first guy in the whale, and then polar bears come in.
You just keep having to crawl higher and higher.
Yeah, it's like, all this frozen whale's good, but there's a warm spot right here. This is pretty good.
Like that's something that it makes you also wonder what the heck else has happened that like man has never seen.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if you hadn't told us that story, I never would have known that that's ever existed in the wild or something like that's happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's one of my favorite ones that like it doesn't usually apply in the settings I'm in, but I'm like, I have
it's
to
a
tell
fascinating story.
Yeah.
Give us some other like whitetail stories worth mentioning that you can think of off the top of your head.
So one of my favorite ones, and I took a deep dive on this buck, is the Minnesota mystery buck from 1956, and it was in the running for the world record, typical. They officially scored him at 212, but it's the Sal Aarons buck. Sal Aarons killed it in 56, and it's another one of those ones where years later they figured out that a couple points were shaved off of it.
Gosh.
And so he's out. But one of the reasons he's called the Minnesota mystery buck is there's all this crazy origin behind him. Now, I know through the research I did and who did it, but that's one I can't say on camera.
Sure.
But so here's what's so cool about this story. Sal Aarons is a, for lack of a better way to put it, like a poor farmer. Back then, made it through the Great Depression and actually, 15 years, 20 years removed, still living in like a small cabin with like 6 kids with a dirt floor, and he kills this buck. So first the deer spends years just laying around in the house, like, and he's an absolute, I just handled this deer, like Keith Snyder owns him. And so first they had this pond. Keep in mind, this is a 212 typical. They have a pond out back the kids like to swim in and stuff. So they used to actually tie the rack to a rope and tie the rope to a tractor and use it to drag the pond to get all the lily pads out of.
You gotta be kidding me.
And so, and they did that. Then a couple years later, Sal Aarons does this home job shoulder mount on it. Like it looks like an inflatable rabbit, or like an old stuffed animal rabbit with horns on it. And for like years after that, the kids would sit in the living room and shoot it with a pellet gun just having fun. So there's like one of the first accounts of someone seeing this deer in their living, like visiting, is this thing's full of holes with hair falling all over the place and fluff and he stuffed it full of like styrofoam. But here's where it gets really cool. So Sal Aarons' farm back then, in the backside of the farm was there was a campsite, and it's one of the places that Al Capone used to go to hide out when he was on the run back and forth from Canada and over towards Montana. And the story has it that Sal Aarons actually sat around drinking moonshine around the fire with Al Capone and was showing him his buck.
No way.
And so like this one, it's like likely Al Capone has held this deer sitting around the campfire drinking moonshine on the run from the law. And years later, actually, like Keith Snyder, what's just funny, he actually got it from him. And I think he gave him like 10 grand. And at the time, and Sal Aarons went out and bought a brand new Chevy. And that was like, but he said when he was in there was still like mostly dirt floor. And, but then, I'm sorry, Keith wasn't the first purchaser, but the person that did purchase it also acquired all of the family pictures and stuff. And then this deer hits the mainstream, things are big. Years later, someone goes back to his house and just asks them if they have any more pictures, pulls out an old drawer that they forgot when the original buyer tried to buy them all. And there were 2 black and white photos of that buck with those 2 kickers.
Do you think that's why he tried to get all the photos to get
Yeah.
rid of?
Oh, yeah. He wanted the deer and he wanted every picture.
He forgot one.
And he forgot one in a drawer.
Golly.
What was that deer called?
The Minnesota mystery buck.
Minnesota mystery.
I thought you were going to say they pulled out a picture of him sitting there with Al Capone.
Oh,
That would be legendary.
that would that rack would blow up then.
What is the golly, that thing is insane. What is the story with is it the Illinois roadkill or the Indiana roadkill? What was
Illinois roadkill.
Illinois roadkill.
Yeah, so that, I mean, Not a crazy story, just it was one of those ones my dad was basically door knocking, and this buck had gotten hit by a car. And
so you say door knocking, he's chasing leads, or he's like literally just knocking on random doors and being like, hey, do you have any big deer?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
This particular one was actually that he had heard there was a giant in that area.
Yeah.
And he knew a general area, but he didn't know who had it. So he finally finds this guy, and the guy had it in a stack of antlers up like high up in a closet on a shelf, and the guy's like knocking stuff down, and my dad said he's like dodging falling antlers and stuff, and but the stuff that's falling out is little, and my dad's starting to be doubtful. He's like, maybe. And when he pulled him out, he had to it wouldn't even go through the door frame. He had to turn it sideways, and it's his favorite deer of all time, the Illinois roadkill.
And it was just hit by a car, and this guy found it.
Mm-hmm. But the story with that one was too that they took him to like a truck depot down the road and weighed him, and he was just over 400 pounds.
Jesus.
The body of him.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
Holy crap.
It's weird because
that's an offensive lineman.
Yeah. But
a big one.
Here's a weird thing about, going back to the scoring stuff. The Illinois roadkill nets 176, but his frame would stand in here with any of these deer. Like he would absolutely, they held the CJ Alexander buck under him, and Illinois roadkill is blatantly bigger.
Really?
Yeah. He's just got this world-class frame, but he doesn't score. I mean, he has a lot of deductions. I think he grossed up near like 200, but when you stand in the room with him, it feels
massive.
like, yeah. And I actually held a 220 non-typical underneath him when I was in there, and the Illinois roadkill dwarfed him. There's a difference when we talk about wanting, even with non-typicals, wanting to have that killer frame and not just a mess of antlers. It's because if you kill something with a 130 typical frame, but he's got enough extra inches to be a 220, when you get around him, it's just different than when you see a 220 frame. Yeah. It's otherworldly.
Give me another story.
Well, I got a quick question
Sure.
first. So you said that your dad was all ACC. He's a sculptor. He's a taxidermist, a guide. Obviously wrote articles. Like, what didn't he do? Like, he sounds like he did everything. Like, what else did he do? Like, how did he have time to do anything else?
Oh yeah, man. He made all the old hunting video with the Wenzels and stuff like that. The writing. He's a painter. And subsequently,
I want to do a documentary on your dad.
Seriously, the story's so interesting, and he actually. It's funny too because now my younger brother is a famous oil painter out west. Mm-hmm. He grew up in the studio and kind of learned to paint from my dad, but he self-taught himself when he was in his late 30s how to paint and sculpt. Just decided he wanted to do it, and
it's in his genes.
Yeah.
Going back to that genetic thing.
And it was crazy because when he left North Carolina high school football, he was the all-time single-season rushing leader.
What part of North Carolina?
He went to East Forsyth High School, right outside of Kernersville.
What part of the state is that?
Real close to High Point.
Okay. Yeah, because we're not far from North Carolina at all.
Yeah, and his father, my grandpa, is in the North Carolina Hall of Fame, Athletic Hall of Fame, and he got drafted. He went pro for Cleveland as a pitcher right out of high school when he was 19. So my brother and I both played. I played football and basketball at the NAIA level, and my brother played at basketball at Montana State. So we're the least accomplished athletes in 4 generations.
That's funny.
But yeah, you talk about people getting, and people like deer are getting bigger.
Yeah.
My dad played at NC State. I think he played at 180. And when I played, we're close to the same height. When I played at NAIA in 2006, I played at 257 as a running back.
Dang.
And so a little bit different weight regimens and dietary stuff. But anyway, getting back to the deer, there's a whole sequence in there. I'd love to interview him. I mean, he was close with Johnny Morris and Jim and Dick Cabela and, all the good kind of again, the trailblazers that everybody knows them all now as the big dogs. But they were a bunch of the good old boys that just had a passion for it and if I remember correctly, like Jim and Dick Cabela were selling flies out of the trunk of their car when he first met them. And then they got to the point where they had a small, flyer, which segued to like a 10-page spread and then grew all the way to the magazine and the retail stores and all this stuff. But
very similar to how Johnny started at Bass Pro.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never heard those stories, but I'd like to someday.
Johnny's is incredible.
I'm going to play a game with you. Unless you've got a deer story in your head that you can think of that would be one that stands out.
I'm trying to think, because there's a lot of cool, interesting stories. I'm trying to think if there's any that because I've been trying to give you the juicy stuff. Maybe I didn't get him with the Al Capone thing. If I'm trying to,
that was a good one.
Yeah,
but here's my problem. I could do this for hours, all day long.
Yeah,
I'll do this. Let's play this game. I have this legendary Whitetails book. This is 40 of the greatest bucks of all time. I've just chosen a random deer. I want you to tell me the name of this deer and the story.
If you skunk me, I'm telling you, I don't know every single deer.
That's okay. It's just a challenge.
Is that the Jerry Reitmeyer buck? Oh, Jerry Hampton buck. Okay. Reitmeyer has bigger drops.
Do you know the story of that one?
I don't.
Okay.
I actually read Legendary Whitetails for the first time when I was like 10, and I haven't read it all the way through since, and I've moved on to other deer. But honestly, a lot of those bucks in the first edition are so old that I'm going to cheat. I just posted this one, the Kurt Van Lith. That's a really cool. He hunted that deer for like 5 or 6 years, and
really.
I'll have to show you the
4-year quest for the king of the cornfield.
Just look at the picture of him in the field with it. I was going to show you that picture, but it's actually right there.
It's in here?
Yeah, it's that picture of him in the field with him.
And it just looks ridiculous. Yeah, that's that picture there.
Yeah.
That is one common denominator we hear a lot of these deer is cornfields.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's the Phantom of the Cornfield buck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why was he called the Phantom of the Cornfield buck? And his sheds are literally right here.
Right here.
Yep.
Number 3 typical in the world.
And I didn't even know about that buck till Josh got him.
Really?
Like, because when we first met, I was just more because I wasn't paying attention to the Shed Hunters Club records until I started, because I was mostly paying attention to the big heads until we started talking the general. And so going on this journey with Mike has been and so I've visited like Keith Snyder's place and Mike's and a few other collectors. This has been like a whole new world for me. That's why I said when I went and saw Mike's whole collection, I called him back the next day and I'm like, you're going to have to retell me
all the stories.
You told me so much information in 5 hours of just taking pictures and going through them all. One other one I'll tell you, and we'll have to look up the deer. It's awesome. But the Fleming sheds, another monster. My dad showed up in camp years ago, and I think it's an Alberta buck. He showed up in camp, and I believe on this one he had Johnny Morris was with him. But he showed up in camp to go hunting, and they're eating dinner that night, and one of those sheds is sitting on the table, and he said, so tell me about this. And one of the guys working in the camp, his 2 sons had found that shed the day before running around somewhere near the lodge. And he said, they were going out to hunt, but he said, hey, I've got $400 here with your name on it if you can go find that other side, and then I'll buy the whole thing from you. So they went and hunted, and those kids went out and shed hunted all day and found that other side. And so when he came back that night to the lodge, they were sitting there. And those sheds are, famous sheds now. But it's funny because there's a couple stories I want to tell too that I'm not sure if I can share them.
You don't have to.
You have too big of an audience. I have to be careful about what
I like the stories that you can't put on here.
I know.
But we get to hear afterwards.
Yeah,
I like those ones.
Yeah. So it started with there's this one fence I jumped over. No.
Cut it.
Yeah. Well, this has been fascinating. I love hearing the stories. Like, I know we've kind of harped on it. Maybe we're beating a dead horse, but it's like value aside, dollars aside, it really, to me, is almost irrelevant. The stories are so cool. Mm-hmm. And as I don't know, man, as someone who just loves deer, like the history, you can't make this stuff up. This guy shoots a world record at 30 years old, doesn't see it again until it goes missing for 40 years. Mm-hmm. Another guy's, having beers with Al Capone, using this thing to scrape lily pads out of his pond. Like, I mean, you just literally can't make this stuff up. You can't
make it. That's why the real stories, because you can't make that up.
No, you never could.
Yeah, I mean, Caleb and I are in the business of stories, and like that to me is the coolest part of all of these.
If it's so outlandish, it must be true.
Yeah. It's just like, how does that even happen?
Yeah.
When a lot of them
how does this happen?
Yeah. A lot of them came from a time too. I think it's a really important point to note that during the Sal Aarons days and the Jordan days and all those, that it was actually that you couldn't become famous. They weren't. So they were more like all the farmers found big sheds and they threw them aside or whatever, but it gave them time to have a story.
Yeah.
And I would say, like a question you asked earlier in like, why are all these stories from back then? I would say now it's that about 80% of the big deer that get killed that are on that world-class status end up getting purchased almost right away by private collectors, and there's no time to have a story.
Yeah. Oh, really? Kind of add to the folklore of it.
Yeah. So, I was going to ask, again, if people have not figured out, I'm kind of a nerd and I love history. They
figured that out, right?
I'm the guy who goes on vacations and picks museums to go to. So like
we know.
Yeah, I know. The history of stuff just fascinates me, especially old things. And like I said, all of these that we talk about, 50s, 60s, 70s. Do you think, and I'm going to use some modern terminology, like all of these bucks have an aura that surrounds them, right? Like you see it and you can like look at it and you're like, there's a story there. And then you hear the story and it like makes that aura come to like it. They truly like, Phantom of the cornfield or the general, like there's an aura. They feel bigger than life because in many ways they are. I mean, it's a giant deer, but I mean, the story itself is bigger than life. It's almost when you hear those stories of some of these people from history, like they're a bigger figure than life. Do you think that going forward in the information age that we'll continue to get bucks that produce that aura, or do you think that it's just like it's not going to happen because you don't have, like you said, the time for, and the like what's interesting with a lot of these is people didn't know what they had, they didn't care, so all these things happen because dude has it and he's scraping the pond with it because damn, he's like whatever. And nowadays I think more generally people understand what a big deer is, and obviously they want to put it out immediately.
I think my answer is no.
I agree.
I don't think you'll ever match these old stories.
Unfortunately, it's going to be more of the scenarios like the C.J. Alexander buck where there was intrigue because there was a lot of mystery and stuff, but not for
I was about to say. There's got to be mystery or that story loses value to me.
Do you think that because obviously that story is not from like an up and up perspective, but at the same time, people love to watch documentaries on Al Capone because, one of the biggest crime bosses of the Prohibition. Do you think that pieces like that are going to have the aura? Kind of the same way as who's that guy from Texas, who everybody always wants to hear all of his stories. And
Charles Beatty?
The poacher, king of poachers guy.
Yeah.
It's Charles Beatty. Yeah.
So do you think like that's going to start to be kind of this thing where people want to try to acquire that one because of this story behind it?
I do. I have full belief that maybe not for CJ, but the deer itself will come back around full circle in the story because it's not the deer was just.
It's not the deer's fault.
Yeah. And the deer will come back around full circle, and I believe one day it'll probably end up in Bass Pro or something, but it'll be.
How though? Because is the state of Ohio allowed to sell that artifact or whatever you want to call it, piece of evidence or whatever. Like
you might know better than me. Were you talking to the DNR guy?
The arresting officer? Yeah, I talked to him before.
Yeah, I have no idea. I learned more about Ohio's laws during that case than I'd ever known before. Do they get locked away forever?
It wouldn't surprise me if they do get locked away forever.
I thought I heard sometimes they would take those, use them for as long as was required for the case. Yeah, and then they would. I thought in some cases they donate them.
Or you can display them, and it's like owned by the state of Ohio or whatever, but you still can display them. I mean, it's still.
I think they will display it. I just don't know if it will ever be.
I feel like I've seen
privately owned by somebody.
I've seen like DNR booths that have mounts.
Montana every so many years does a public auction with all the confiscated animals.
And maybe they make a special exception for this one because it would be. Just I don't know, such a grand item or something.
I mean, they're all about revenue, and if you especially if they can put the money back towards conservation of the state. I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't. That'd be kind of dumb not to.
Yeah, I would love to see it get the what it deserves, though.
Yeah,
just honoring the deer because it is at the end of the day he's a giant.
Oh, no question. Yeah, the modern era of the legend I think is dwindling.
Now, I think that there's still opportunities for it.
For sure.
With the right situation. Like we talked about northern Alberta, rural parts of South Dakota, North Dakota.
Don't you think when I'm door knocking that my last question when they say no is, well, do you have any old deer laying around?
I was about to say, you said door knocking for these, and I saw Lee go, like, I could do that year round.
I loved yesterday with Mike. Every question, Lee's like, "What county did you say?"
Yeah.
What was
I'm just taking mental notes.
What was the road you were on?
Open
those genetics are still out there.
Open that notes app in your phone. How many cities and states you got in there?
Lee's gonna have 2 different sets of pins on Spartan Forge. He's gonna have
all the historic.
He's gonna
pins.
have the bucks that he's hunting. Then he's gonna have leads for all the sheds that he's trying to collect now. He's going to be mapping them out.
I'm telling you, but that would be, I don't know if you need a second drug in your life, Lee, but that would be another one.
I'm kind of kidding, but I'm also kind of serious. Where like if I talk to an old farmer and he's like no to hunting, I seriously, you got any old sheds laying around or any old deer? Like, I mean, you just never know. Because I've talked to farmers in remote places that have said no to hunting that I wish I would have potentially asked the question. These old timers.
You get a farmer in his 70s or 80s. He's not on social media. He's kind of preserved. He is not in that world at all. And he's got a 127-inch shed sitting in the corner. Mm-hmm. He has no idea. He still thinks it's valueless. He's like, I thought this was pretty big, so I put it in the corner.
Yep.
It's like, well, it's pretty big to me too.
They're out there, man.
Oh yeah.
No question. I'm gonna have to do a podcast with Mike.
Absolutely, you would not regret that.
I would love to do it in person because I know he's full of stories, and so I definitely gotta make sure I do one with him.
But I told Alex it's like an adult Easter egg hunt.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Prize egg. You got to find the prize egg now.
It's treasure hunting.
Yep.
Well, we've gone for about an hour 40. This has been really fun. Yeah, when it goes quick, it's it's been a good conversation. So I've enjoyed the heck out of this. Thank you again for bringing this whole thing to life for us to share some stories and see some really cool points of history in the whitetail world. I'm gonna go find some now. I'm not even kidding. Like every farmer I talk to now, I'm not even gonna ask to hunt. Yeah. Just, hey, do you got any big shed laying around? And let me search your barn.
Mm-hmm. Heck yeah. Well, no, man, I appreciate you having me on as well. We've had more fun in these last 24 hours.
Oh, it's been a blast.
It's been so cool. It's been hard to know which direction to even look. And at one point, everything that was in this room, I'm like, I could sit in here with nobody in here and just take pictures for hours. There's just so much to look at. But it's just fun to take part. And like I said, I'm here kind of like you are because I love it. And that's the main motivation. But maybe we'll have to reconvene down the road and bring some of the new stories to light. And
for sure.
I look forward to seeing your new addiction.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. All right, appreciate you, golf. You want to finish it, Ryer?
Lee would like for me to relay to the viewing audience that he appreciates y'all tuning in, and he'll see you on the next one.
You did great. See you guys.
That's good.
Yeah.